Okay, so we're still in 2.8 function operations. So now we're just going to do some add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay. So my function f is this, and g is this. It says find the composition of each function. Some of you take composition classes. Okay. Well, composition just means stick some stuff together. Okay, so in writing, you're sticking words together. In math, right now, with functions, we're going to stick two functions together. So this is not just always about writing. Okay. Here, it says, find f of 4 and add it to g of 4. This is find f of 4 and subtract 4. It's all 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to find f of 4 first. So here's my function f, and I'm going to put, so wherever there's an x, I'm going to put 4. Okay, 5 times 4 is 20. So f of 4 is 22. Then we're going to find g of 4. So wherever there's an x in a 4. So g of 4 is 15. So now this is the same as writing f of 4. So f of 4 is 22 and g of 4 is 15. So I just add those two numbers together. Now when I subtract it, f of 4 is 22, subtract 4 is 15. That is totally not 77. That is like a mistake. It's just 7. I'll fix that. Okay, when I multiply, f of 4 is 22, g of 4 is 15, so I multiply them together, and I get this. And when I divide, f of 4 is 20, 15, and you can't make it any more simple. Okay, so now let's do some examples. So here's f of x, and here's g of x, and we have to find the composition. So here we're sticking 1 into each function. So let's find f of 1 first. So we're going to put a 1. So f of 1 is equal to 2. Now we're going to do g of 1. Where there's an x, I'm going to put a 1. So g of 1 equals 8. It says add the two functions together when you substitute 1 in. So this is f of 1 plus g of 1. F of 1 is 2, 8, so that's 10. So when we add them, it's 10. So now f of 1 subtract g of 1. Well, that's 2 subtract 8, 6. Now I have to multiply them. F of 1 multiplied by g of 1. Well, that's 2 multiplied by 8, which is 6. Now I have to divide them. F of 1 divide g of 1. So that's 2 divided by 8. And I like things as a decimal, so I'll go 0 a quarter. Okay. Oops. So now sometimes it's dead. Okay. So f of x is a straight line and g of x is a parabola. So it says f of 1 and g of 1. Well, f is a straight line, so let's go to 1 and we go up. We put, if x equals 1, what is y? So I go I go up to the straight line f, and it says 3. If x is 1, y is 3. So I put 1 for f of 1. 1 into my g of x, which is the parabola. So I start at 1, go up to the parabola, go over, and g of 1 is 1. So then I just go 3 plus. Let's try negative 2. So I start at negative 2, and I go to f. F is the straight line. Oh, so if I go up to f, well, I just stay there, so that means 0. So f of negative 2 is 0. Now negative 2 going up to the parabola, I go up to the parabola, so it's 4. So at negative 2, g is -4, so the answer is -4. Let's apply them at 2. So if x is 2, I'm going to go up to the straight line for f, and it's 4. Oh, they're both at the same spot. g of x is also 4, so it's 16. Now we go start at -2. Oops, these are the wrong lines. So it says go to -2. So I'll have to fix that. -2, so I'm going to go up, which is 0, because I don't go anywhere. Now I'm going to look at g of x at -2. That's 4. So g of negative answer is 0. So sometimes we're just going to have a graph to look at. So let's do the examples here. Add the two functions together after I check each function at 4. So that's really saying f of 4, substitute 4, oops, and add to it, g of 4. So we're putting 4 into each function. So f is the blue, so I'm going to go to 4, go up to the blue, and over. So f of 4 is equal to 9. Now g of 4 is the red, so I go up to red, and that's 2. So g of 4 is 2. So that's 11. Now we're going to subtract them at -2. So f of -2 subtract g of -2. So now we have to go to -2. That's down. So I'm going to go here. So f of -2 is -3. And g of -2, well, g is the red. Well, there is nothing here. Shape, remember it looks like the square root? That's the graph of a square root. Well, I can't put negative numbers. I can't put a square root, so you can see all the negative numbers, there is no graph over here. It does not exist. So if I tried to put a negative number here, there's an error because the graph does not exist on the negative side. So if it does not exist, I have to put undefined. This is undefined. And when we have undefined as part of our equation here, of trying to put these two functions together, our final answer is undefined. Okay? It means it doesn't have an answer. Okay, let's look at the next one. Now I'm going to multiply them. So f by g of 1. So I go to 1, and a f is blue. So I'm going to go up to blue. So that's 1, 2, 3. So 1 into the blue function and go over, it's 3. G of 1, 1. So if I put 1 in, 1 comes out. So that's now f of 0 over g of 0. So at 0, f of 0 is the blue, and g of 0, what's g of 0? Is the red one, so I stay at 0, so that's 0. Can I have a fraction that has a 0 on the bottom? That's a problem. So if I can't have that, so that's undefined. Have a 0 in the bottom. Okay. And if there is a 0 there, then we say the answer is undefined. Okay. Another information is if I have table of values. Okay. So remember, I'm a little lazy. This is my table of values for f. Instead of making a new table of values, I keep the same x's and I just go, there's my table of value for g of x. So if x is -2, 2. If x is 0, it's 0. So it's really two table of values stuck together. It's just so I don't have to make two tables. So it says add them. 4 plus g of 4. So we're saying if x is 4, what is f of x? Well, it's 9. If x is 4, what's 4? Okay, it's 2. All right. Well, let's look at subtract. F of negative 2, g of negative 2. So if x is negative 2, f of negative 2 is negative 3. And 2, g of x is, undefined. So that means our final answer is undefined. Okay, let's do multiply. I'm going to do f of 1 multiply g of 1. So if x is 1, if x is 1, g of 1 is 1. So that's 3. So now we're going to divide. So divide by g of 0. So if x is 0, f of 1 is 1. And if x is 0, problem. So 0 cannot be in the bottom of a fraction. So we have to say that this is defined. Okay. And if you forget, let's just check on our calculator. What does our calculator say? There's a problem. So if we try to do it in our calculator, even our calculator knows there's a problem. Okay. Next. So now, what happens if we have an equation? Or we have, sorry, not equations, kind of like equations, but functions. We have two functions. So when we are given functions, we have to put 4 into f of x and 4 into g of x. Let's do f of 4 and add to it g of 4. Okay, so put 4 into this equation. So that means go 2 of 4, put the 4 in there, and substitute the 4 in where the x is. And I'm going to add to it this, but I'm going to put 4 in here. Okay, there's nothing in front, so I can take all these brackets off, but I can simplify this. This is 8 plus 1. What's the square root of 4? 2. And I just took the bracket off because it's just a plus here. When it's just plus, it's okay. So this is 9, 10, 11. And we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to substitute a negative 2 into each of these functions. So for f, I go 2 times negative 2 plus 1. Subtract the square root of negative 2. Well, this is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 1. And I can take, because it's nothing in front, subtract, well, what's the square root of negative 2? Are you allowed to put negatives in a square root? No. What does your calculator say if you forget? Error. So if I'm trying to put a negative under a square root, I have to say, it's undefined. It means it doesn't exist. If I look at the graph of this, at negative 2, there is no graph here. So this does not exist. That's why we say undefined. So because I have an undefined in part of this, the whole thing is undefined. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Now I'm going to multiply them together. So f of 1 multiply g of 1. So I'm going to put a 1 into this function. And I'm going to multiply it by the square root of 1. So that's 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Square root of 1 is 1. 3 times 1, well, that's just 3. That was okay. Now let's divide. f of 0 divided by g of 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in here. So that's 2 times 0 plus 1. And I'm going to put a 0 in here. So 2 times 0 is 0, so I have a 1 on the top. Square root of 0. Well, that's 0, but if you forget, let's check. Yep. Oh, problem. Am I allowed to have a 0 in the bottom of a fraction? No. So I have to say undefined. Okay. If you forget, you can just go 1 over 0. Yeah, there's an error. Okay.